Well, good morning, everyone. It's really, really exciting to join you guys. I live in Manchester. I know you as a church quite well. Various friends are here and part of this church, which is lovely. So I actually feel it's a massive honour to be able to share with you this morning. We've had a little bit of a hullabaloo with some of the technical stuff we're going to try and do today. So we're going to give it a go. If it doesn't work, we're going to ditch it. But the first thing you might want to do, if you have a phone with you, just to join in, we're going to try and be a little bit interactive today. So you just need to scan the QR code. I'm sure you've done that many times in your life. COVID kind of brought the QR code into new life, didn't it? It was around before and no one really ever used them. Now, wherever you go, someone's got a QR code for you to scan. So if you do that, that would be wonderful. I'll just give you a moment to do it. And we're going to take a little bit of time. Ralph said I'm the CEO of Visible Ministries, which is the name of our charity, but our flagship project, and really the focus of this morning is this project called Naked Truth. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit about this morning. I want to start by, if you have scanned in your phone, you should have the opportunity to vote one way or the other. And it's a simple question. Have you heard of Naked Truth? Do you know what we do? And some of you are answering, 35 of you, 36. Wow, look at, yes, thank you. Okay, so interestingly, it's about just under, a bit half and half, I was going to say, but more of you don't know about us than those of you that do. So I will take a little bit of time this morning to share a bit about us and who we are and what we do. But before I do that, why don't I play you a bit of a video, and hopefully this will give you a little bit of our heart and what we're about.
When they ask us why we stand for this and resist the demand of a system that insists we dilute our standards of treating humanity as a gift, we tell them there's a better way. We found the path of grace that led us from our grave, and we opened up our hearts again. We tell them that we've seen too much, that destructive yet seductive touch that pulled us from the path of love to the desolate wastelands of lust, driving families and marriages and our own sanity to the dust. We tell them that it ain't worth the cost, that instant gratification always comes at the loss of a sustained satisfaction that shortcuts can't cross. We tell them that minds are held hostage, surrounded by a montage of images that sabotage childhood innocence, and in the search for affection and significance are riddled with cynicism and indifference. We tell them people make a profit from the losses of others, objectified, coerced, and uncovered. We tell them however you brand it, however you bottle it, poison will always be poison, no matter how you normalize and offer it. But there is another story. We have heard a sweeter song, bearing witness to pieces of art restored back to their original glory, with places to belong, open eyes and free lives. We have a vision that we can't unsee, where people believe they're worthy of being loved, and they live with an undisruptible peace. There is an incorruptible seed buried beneath the soil of our lives that we nourish and feed. Though we bear scars, we are marked but not defined. There is hope in new stars. Light shines in the dark and it will not be overcome. And so it is with us, restored and wholehearted. We're sharing the naked truth about porn. We're just getting started.
So, yeah, that's us. If you didn't know, we're doing that. We are trying to open eyes and free lives from the damaging impact of pornography. And what that looks like, oh, we need to press present. Thank you, Miles. What that looks like really is Yeah, there we go. Back again. There we go. What that really looks like are different things, really. We talk about this idea of being both upstream and downstream. So, downstream for us is trying to offer hope and help through recovery programs, support, counseling, that kind of stuff to those who struggle with porn themselves. It's become a life controlling issue. They need help, they need to be rescued. It kind of, this upstream, downstream thing connects to a parable told by Desmond Tutu. And he talks about this idea of a man walking by a river and seeing someone drowning in the river. And so immediately going to rescue that person, pull them out of the water onto the bank. And almost the moment that guy has rescued someone, they then both notice that there's more people coming down the current of the river and seem to be drowning too, seem to need rescuing as well. So together they're now in the water trying to rescue people. And more people seem to be appearing, needing to be rescued. And what Desmond Tutu says is at some point, someone has to go upstream and find out why all these people keep falling in the water in the first place. And in many ways, that's what we're trying to do. So we want to rescue people who are struggling, who are drowning in their porn use, and the people actually who've been impacted by that. We work with partners and spouses of porn users too. But then the other part of that work is that upstream work. So we work in schools, talking to young people about the harms of pornography, or with politicians, or with parents, because we recognize that part of what we need to do is help people not fall in the water in the first place. And so we've been involved in that work now for over 10 years. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't sit down with my careers advisor when I was 13 and say, I think what I might do is start a porn project. It wasn't really part of my plan. I'll share a little bit with you about why I started Naked Truth this morning. But when I was little, I think for me, the thing I wanted to be was not the founder of a porn project, but a painter, an artist. I remember that was for me a bit of a life ambition, and I used to love it. And I don't know if many of you have kids or have had little kids, but I remember when I was kind of like 3, 4, something like that, going to nursery, play school, kindergarten, if you're American, whatever you call it. And I remember basically the only thing we did every single day was painting. I don't remember learning any numbers or any letters. I just remember standing in front of one of those A-frame kind of easel things where you could stand on one side and your friend could stand on the other. Do you remember these? This is right. Okay, good. You're with me. And just kind of like taking in the moment. We've been given some plate. The teachers come round with that paint in a kind of fairy liquid bottle and squirted some paint on a piece of paper normally, or a plate, something like that. And I would take it in. I'd think about what do I want to draw. I'd consider the composition and the perspective. I'd get just the right amount of paint on the brush, and then the art would begin. Ian, that was a hard day's work for me at nursery. And then I would go and I'd grab at the end of the day my painting and I would go and meet my mum. Now, I, as a little kid, had no idea what was going on inside my mum's mind. As a parent, I now know what was going on inside of my mum's mind, which was boredom and indifference. Because I remember kind of like running up to my mum and going like this to meet her at school, and she'd go, oh, hello, what have you done today? But in her head she's thinking, I know what he's done today. It's what he always does every single day. It's painting. And I'd go, oh, I've been painting. And she'd go, oh, that sounds exciting, doesn't it? Let's take a look. And I would show her this painting, which I'd folded whilst it was wet. So before it was pretty awful, it was pretty bad, but now it's sort of like and my mum is now looking at what is basically vomit on sugar paper, and she's going, oh wow, I see, yes, well, that's good, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah. And then she will ask sometimes the deadly question, which is, what is it then? And I'd go, it's you, oh, thanks a lot. But then I would ask the question that my mum would probably dread, which is, can I have my picture on the fridge, please? And my mum would be thinking, there's 13 other pictures, all equally rubbish, on the fridge. But she would do it because she was a mum and she loved me, and she would put my picture on the fridge, knowing knowing actually when our friends came round for a cup of tea or something and they kind of looking around the kitchen, they'd see these monstrosities on the fridge and they would go, okay, maybe Ian's musical. Because all they can see, right, is mess. That's all they can see. It's just a load of mess on some paper. Even my own dear mum, all she can see is mess. That's it. But for me, it was different. I'd walk past the fridge and I would see more. I'd see the fire engine, the portrait of my mum, the spaceman, whatever it was I had in mind. Somehow, for me, it was different. I could see more. And I want to take this idea of when we see mess, God sees more a little further with us this morning. Because absolutely that, I think, is the heart, really, of so much of what the Bible talks about. Because, it's not hard for us as human beings to see mess wherever we look. It's not hard for us to see, things going wrong, to see disaster, to see brokenness, to see sin, to see darkness in our lives, in the world around us, in the people that we love and care for. It's not hard for us to see mess. That's easy. Just open up the BBC News app. It's not hard to see mess. The question is, can we see more? Can we see hope? Can we see life? Can we see something that God might want to do? You will be very familiar with those verses in Isaiah that say, see, I'm doing a new thing. Can you not perceive it? That verse, it makes my soul sing, but it also makes my eyes squint. I'm kind of like going, can I see it? Can I see the new thing? Sometimes it's hard to, right? And so what we're going to do today is we're going to look at a passage which I think is going to feel familiar to many of you. You maybe have heard many sermons even from this passage before, but we're going to just take another look at it again today. And it's not Isaiah, but it's another one of those major prophets. It's Ezekiel. And we're going to look at Ezekiel 37. I'll read it to you, but if you want to, get your phone out, pretend that you're reading the Bible when really you're checking Instagram, you can do that too. So let me read that. It says this, Ezekiel 37. Of course, this is Ezekiel, a prophet. If they weren't in exile, he would have been a priest. And he has this vision from God. And it says this, that the hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord. So this vision, that's what he's describing. And he set me in the middle of a valley, and it was full of bones. And he led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, the bones that were very dry. And he asked me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I said, Sovereign Lord, you alone know. Later in the passage, we actually discover that these bones in this vision, they represent a symbolic of something, and they represent the people of Israel, Ezekiel's own nation. And we start to begin to understand that. And so God, what he's doing in this vision is he's placing Ezekiel right in the middle of his nation's brokenness and pain and punishment and defeat. And I just wonder, even now, before we go any further, have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like somehow God has just kind of placed you in the middle of brokenness, in the middle of pain and heartache? Maybe yours, maybe someone else's, maybe the nation's, maybe, when Jesus says, blessed are those that mourn, is he talking about if you're not mourning, if you're not feeling the pain of what's happening around us, is there something missing? And so he places us sometimes in that. And sometimes brokenness, can be really close to home for us, can't it? Sometimes it's our very own brokenness. Sometimes it's someone we deeply care about. One of the reasons that I founded Naked Truth was because in 2007, my dad got arrested for having indecent images of children's child sexual abuse images, child pornography, on his computer. And someone at work had found that and reported that to the police. And we discovered, that this man, my dad, who I loved, And I say love not because I don't love him anymore, but he died a year after his arrest. He'd had this addiction to pornography that he'd hidden for decades, and over time had escalated into something which turned from being mainstream legal pornography to the abusive material that was found on his computer. And for a long time, our pain as a family and the brokenness of that whole situation, not just for him, but actually for so many more, it was incredibly close to home. And it's interesting that in the passage we see that what God actually does is, as I said, he kind of picks up Ezekiel and he places him amongst his nation's brokenness and defeat and pain. But he doesn't just even place him there, he causes him to walk amongst the bones. Did you catch that? Back and forth amongst the bones. It's almost like God deliberately wants Ezekiel to have proximity to this, to get really close to it. And for for Ezekiel as a priest, that would have been really difficult, because his kind of belief system would have been that him having proximity to those bones would have made him ritually unclean. So that was a problem. This made him dirty, ritually. But also it would have been so disturbing for him when he realized that these bones represent his people. And so there was this kind of dual thing going on, I think, that God was doing. When people hear about naked truth, when they hear about open eyes, free lies from the damaging impact of pornography, they often want to change the subject. If I'm in the hairdressers and, hey, what do you do then? Or the car insurance guy. There is often, because it makes people feel disturbed, maybe a bit dirty, particularly in church. There's this thing of why maybe even now you're sitting here going, why are we talking about this on a Sunday? I come to church to be blessed, not to be made to feel icky. But I really firstly want to honor, you as a church to even allow this conversation to happen. But I do believe that this is part of what it means sometimes to listen to God, is that sometimes the things he wants to say, that it might not feel comfortable. It might be disturbing. It might even feel a bit dirty. It certainly would have for Ezekiel. But he wants us to have proximity. He wants us sometimes to have closeness to brokenness and pain so that we can understand it, so if we can face up to it. Because when we see mess, he sees more. But we have to see it first before we can start to believe for the more. And so what we're going to do is we are going to go on a little bit of a journey, if that's okay. I'm going to actually walk you amongst the bones. It's not going to take ages, but I am going to take a bit of time just to help you understand, give you some proximity to what's happening in our lives, in our nation, amongst our young people and different generations. And so to help us do that, let's just watch this video to begin with. Oh, or not, because it won't let you, because it thinks you're a bot. That's okay. We'll move on rather than faff around with that. Let me ask you a question instead, okay? How many hits does one porn site get in 1 year? I'm going to literally give you 30 seconds to come up with a number with the person next to you, but I'd be intrigued to know what you think. How many hits do you think one porn site gets in 1 year? I'm not going to ask Katie because she knows the answer, but anyone else? And then I'm going to ask you for a number. Okay, that's it. That's all you're getting. That's all you're getting. Anyone want to volunteer a number for us? Yes. Between between 1 or 10, is that 5? 5 billion. Okay, so 5 billion. And what we're going to do is, I think, maybe we're not actually. We're going to vote on it, but then I'm just seeing that it's not on there. So let's have a look. Yeah, no, it's not on there. I wonder why. Okay, well, I'll tell you. The answer is 56 billion hits in 1 year. And that's just one website. So one of the things I want you to understand is that porn is no longer kind of like those, as you will know, but some of you are a little older, this is what you will think of. It's no longer those magazines on the top shelf, you know? It's no longer kind of like those shops on the A1 that you drive past, or in kind of like the back streets of the northern quarter. It's not that anymore. You know, there's been this shift from the sex shop to the smartphone. And so what that means is that it means that people who, are porn users are no longer men in dirty Macs. It's anyone who owns a product made by Mac. That's the change that's happened. And so here are some of the bones. Here are some of the stats just to kind of help you understand that. So in 2020, Ofcom, who you might have heard of, kind of regulator here in the UK, did some research around this. 49% of UK adults said during that research they had watched porn in that month. We've done various kind of reports and kind of surveys and stuff as Naked Truth as well. So we did a Comres survey of 2,000 people. 38% watch porn at least once a week. So that's 2 in 5 once a week. 13% said that they were addicted. That's over 1 in 10. So 1 in 10 people said that they were addicted to porn. 49% said it had a negative impact on their mental health. Get your phones out again, and I'm going to ask you a question. It's entirely up to you whether you want to answer this next question or not, but I'll reassure you, I have no way of knowing who puts what answer, okay? There's no kind of tech here that kind of reveals to me who said what, and as you've seen with the voting thing earlier, it just comes up on the screen as a percentage. But I'm going to ask the question that we asked at a recent men's event, which was, when did you last view porn? And at that event, you can see in the last month it was 30%, but I wonder what it is here. So you can answer this question if you want to. You don't have to. But I wanted you to see that actually amongst Christians at this men's event I was at, passionate, people fired up, worshipping God for the first 40 minutes. I then asked this very question, and that was the answer. As we saw, what is it here at Vine Life today in this room? Okay. Thank you for being honest about that. So what we can see is just in this room today that in the last month, nearly 10%, 9% of you has seen porn, used porn. You can also see that quite a lot of you said you've never looked at porn. Now, I didn't give you a definition of porn, did I? So Collins English Dictionary is that porn is images, films, books, writings that are being created to stimulate sexual excitement. So yeah, that might mean the porn sites, but it might also mean some of the stuff that's on Netflix, or it might even be a book that you read. And so maybe your answer would look different, I don't know, if you were thinking about porn in that sense. But I don't want you to see that as kind of like okay, so that's that then. that's that. One of the reasons I wanted us to do this is partly for those of you that are struggling, for you to see you're not alone. You're not the only one in this room today. You are not the only one who's struggling with this. And that's really important to know, because one of the things that shame does is it tells us it's me, it's just me, that everyone else is sorted and I am just disgusting. And so just see it. You're not the only one. And you're certainly not the only one in terms of being a Christian who struggles with this. So last year, Barna did a report of where they talked to, again, over 2,000 Christians. And these are the stats amongst the churches. 54% admit to using porn. At least 32% once a month. Some of those wouldn't call themselves practicing Christians, so they'd ask questions specifically to those who identified as practicing Christians. People who go to church, who've, reading their Bible, who are doing that sort of stuff. 22% of them watching porn weekly, 7 daily. So I show you this stuff, these stats again, not to shock you or to surprise you, but to help you walk amongst the bones for a moment, for you to understand what is happening in church, in the people you love's lives, because there are people in this room who you love who are struggling. Maybe amongst our young people and our children. So again, a recent report, Children's Commissioner 2024, 10% of 9-year-olds in England have been exposed to pornography. This rises to a quarter by the age of 11. So these are the bones. These are the bones. A few more. Oh, I read you some of this before. One of the things that's important for us to recognize is even if you were to put the word porn into a website, you're not just getting kind of topless images of, men and women. You're getting often very violent, abusive, aggressive, or perhaps back in the day would have been called hardcore pornography. In fact, one MP puts it simply, what is illegal to sell because of regulation we have around how violent stuff is. What's illegal to sell in a sex shop is the first search results when you put porn into Google, which if you think about it, that's what a 15-year-old is probably going to do. And so what they're being exposed to often is violent and aggressive pornography. And that has an impact on young people. That has an impact on us as young adults. It has then an impact on our relationships, the way we see ourselves, the way we see other people. That last stat, 56, over half of divorces citing porn as a significant reason in the breakdown of the marriage that led to the divorce. These are the bones. And I kind of, I want you to see them, to understand them. I want to ask you that question. How are you feeling? Now you kind of have this proximity. How does that feel for you? Do you feel a bit dirty, like Ezekiel would have? Do you feel disturbed, like Ezekiel would have? Maybe you feel like the bones yourself. The bones in the passage, they say this. They say, "We are the nation of God. There is no life in us. All hope has gone." Maybe that's how you feel. Maybe you're one of those 10% that have looked at porn in the last week, or 9%, and maybe that's how you feel. You feel like those dry bones. Something that's really, really important for you to realize is that, yes, Ezekiel must have been deeply moved, deeply disturbed when he was faced with this brokenness. It reminds me of Jesus when it says that when he saw the people in Jerusalem and their brokenness and their kind of disconnection from God, really, in God's heart, that he was deeply moved. He says that he saw that they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd, doesn't it? And so what we know is that even when there's rebellion and regrettable decisions that cause our brokenness, that was certainly true of Israel. They were in exile. This was all this was kind of like a brokenness that was of their own making. God's heart is that we have life and life to the full. And so he asks Ezekiel, and I think he asks us the same question: can these bones live? Can they live? When you see mess, God sees more. And so the next bit is really important, isn't it? This next part is so essential, because what he then does, of course, is he goes on to ask, can these bones live? And as you heard, Ezekiel's response is a very good kind of theological response, which is only you know, Lord. He kind of like goes, well, I haven't got a clue. I really don't know. I'm kind of hoping you know. Because right now, for me, what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, I really do not know. And God's response to that honest reply of Ezekiel is, well, prophesy then. Prophesy to the bones. It says here in verse 4, then he said to me, prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I will make breath enter you and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath into you and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord. And I know this church and a little bit about where you're at and stuff like that. I know that prophecy isn't like a word that freaks you out or is weird to you. You're kind of having words for each other and for your nation and for your city. You would be comfortable with that language. I know that prophecy might mean different things to different people. Sometimes you hear the word prophecy and some people are thinking, I have 7 pictures before breakfast and that's great. Others of you are like, yeah, it doesn't really happen to me that often, but I believe in it and I know it's important. So what does it mean to prophesy to the bones? And what does that look like for us? Is it to kind of speak something out in worship and in prayer? Or is there something else? Is there something more? I think a really good way of us thinking about prophecy is this, just that we begin to write a better story with our imagination, with our prayer, with our action, with the way that we lean into certain things in our lives, that as we begin to see them more, imagine them more, live out them more, that is actually us beginning to prophesy. And so what do we see in this passage, and how does that then help us? Well, one of the first things I think you might have noticed, and you'll know from the story, is that once Ezekiel begins to prophesy, that it says that the bones start to rattle and they start to come together. And then as the passage we've just read indicates, there's this process of bones rattling, and then there's kind of like muscles, and then there's tendons, and then there's flesh. There's like these steps. It doesn't just happen like that. It's not like Ezekiel prophesies, bones come to life, and then suddenly, bosh, they appear like that. It could have happened like that, but it's not what happens. What happens is this kind of bones, and then tendons, and then muscles, and then flesh. You've got this process. I find that super helpful, actually. And one of the reasons why I find that helpful is because in the work that we do as Naked Truth, as we seek to prophesy to the bones that we believe God's causing us to have proximity to, I know there's often process involved. Often there's a journey that takes place for individuals. Sometimes someone might get some prayer and that's it. They never want to look at porn again. Sometimes it happens like that. But do you know what? Often it doesn't. Often what happens is there's work that has to be done. There's a journey that has to be taken by those individuals. And so part of what we do is we try and kind of enable that journey. So we have a few different things, for example. And partly I want to show you this because 9% of you are struggling right now, okay? And some of you are walking with people who are struggling. And so I just want you to know what we have and what we do. But I also want you to kind of understand that there is a process that can be taken. There is a journey that you can go on, that you don't have to feel like there is no hope left. There is no life in me, like those bones said. And so 2 of the things that we have is these 2 recovery courses. One's called Control Alt Delete, which is like a video on demand thing. You can just kind of watch some videos and start that journey, that process. And it's not going to happen like that, but you will begin to find hope and freedom as you do that. The other is Click to Kick, which is an online support group that we run. And that too is a way in which people over time, it's an 8-week course, begin to start that process. We don't really have time because I'm trying to keep to sort of play what I was going to show you, but if you go onto our YouTube page, you'll find different stories of different people and a number of different people just saying the journey that they've been on, the process that they've been on. I'm just going to jump to this slide here, but here's a couple of quotes. One is from a Click to Kick member. So I mentioned this 8-week course. It's like a Zoom meeting. You can join at lunchtime in your car, and no one needs to even know that you're kind of part of that group. Or you can kind of be a little bit more open about it. But this guy here is somebody who, after decades of thinking like there was no hope for him, there was no life to be had. He says, after doing Click to Kick, I haven't seen porn for 6 months. It's the longest time since I was a teenager. It's been a profound freedom, one I have dreamed of, but doubted could ever become my reality. This other one here is from one of the partners. So as I said, we kind of work with women mostly who are experiencing betrayal trauma, and we're realizing that 70% of people who experience betrayal show all the kind of criteria of PTSD. There's healing and help that's needed for partners as well, and spouses. And so that's part of what we offer as well. And this is, as you can see on the screen, Wholehearted is our partner program, the impact that that's had on her. All that to say that the bones can live. It might be a process, it might be a journey, but it can happen. We are seeing it all the time. Restoration, transformation. And actually it can happen for you. If you need restoration, if you're struggling with this yourself, or someone in your family is struggling with this, or your husband or your wife is struggling with this, your boyfriend, your girlfriend is struggling with this, you can have hope. You can have life. So in the Ezekiel prophecy, I just want to mention this. A couple of things happen. The rattling, the flesh, the bones, it all starts to happen. But have you noticed that that's actually not the end of the story? What we see happen is that they're just sort of standing there in front of Ezekiel, these bodies, but something's still missing. And so God says, okay, now I want you to prophesy to the breath. You've prophesied to the bones, but you need to also prophesy to the breath. And that is a really important thing to notice, because if our response to something like pornography is just practical, it's just psychological, then it's only half the job. Because actually people need life to the full. And what we understand is that, the thief comes and he kills and he steals and destroys, but Jesus, he brings life, and he brings life to the full. And so we believe this. We believe that, we can help with those practical things. We can prophesy to the bones, but it's Jesus who brings the breath. It's Jesus who brings the life. In other words, we can help, but we believe it's Jesus who heals. And we've seen that too. We've seen people not only get free from porn, but also maybe discover for the first time that there is a God who loves them and who breathes life and brings full life to them. Maybe they rediscover that because they've been sort of almost convincing themselves they don't qualify, and they rediscover the fact that there is life. Literally, they have a revival. They are revived by God. And I love that. I love the fact that 15 of our team, we've got 60 people on our team around the world, 15 of our team are former clients. I love that. Romans 12, verse 21 says this, doesn't it? Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. I love it when the very things that we almost seem to destroy us become the very things that enable us to overcome what the devil does and what evil does. So, what does this mean for us today? What does it mean for us to prophesy? What does it mean for us when we see mess to actually see more? I think there's two things really. I think there's a posture, and then I think there's a kind of action that you could maybe take. The first, I think, is this posture, and it's basically something that you see throughout Scripture. For example, in the Psalms, you hear this: God is our refuge and our strength, our ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. We will not fear, though the earth gives way. Habakkuk 3, though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vine, though the olive crop fails, on and on it goes, I will be joyful in my God, my Saviour. He is my strength. Psalm 23, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will not fear. Have you noticed that throughout Scripture there's like a posture, which I think is one that God calls us as his people to adopt? And it's this kind of like, even though I will posture. It's what I think we see in Ezekiel 7. Even though you see a valley of dry bones, will you see more? Even though I may see this brokenness around me, I will. What is the I will? I think it's I will hope. It's I will believe. I will step out in faith. I will pray. I will stand. I will love. I will be courageous and admit I need help. I will fight. You know, I think there is this kind of even though I will posture. And I'd love to encourage you as a church, as an individual this morning, just to hear that maybe God wants you to know something. And it's simply this, that if you can adopt a posture that says, even though I will trust, I will believe, I will hope, I will dare, I will prophesy. That's the point where he can step in and bring some of the change that we see. There's a famous story about a lady called Louise Johnson, who was an owner of a hairdresser's in I'm trying to think where it was actually. I think it might be even in Birmingham, somewhere in Birmingham in the Midlands. And she'd loved this business. She'd poured herself into this business. And what happened one day in her town in the Midlands was there were riots. I don't know if you remember this, but kind of like 15 years ago, there was a time in the summer where there were loads of riots happening all over the country. And these riots meant that people started looting shops. And you might remember it, people going into JD Sports and kind of nicking all the trainers and all that kind of stuff during these riots. And if you work for JD Sports, quite understandably, what you do is you lock yourself in the stock cupboard and you hope that no one hurts you. You're like, I'm getting paid minimum wage, good luck, right? That's what you do if you work for JD Sports. But if you're Louise Johnson and it's your business, you don't have that posture. In fact, what she did was she stood in front of her shop. And as the people were coming down, looting all the shops all around her on the high street, she stood in front of her shop and she simply said this: "You are not having my shop." And she started like eyeballing these people, And she was like this grandma, right? And they were kind of walking by and they were kind of seeing the grandma, who seemed to be a bit of a lioness, actually. And they thought, do you know what? There's another shop we can go to. And she was on the news afterwards and she kind of was telling her story. But I remember when I heard that story, I thought, there's something there about the fact that it's easy to say, just don't hurt me, to hide. And when you hear about some of the stats we've heard today, maybe you're a parent and you're just going, just don't hurt us. This world we live in, it's just, But then there's a different posture that I think as people of faith we sometimes have to take, which is just like, no. It's a posture of, you're not having my church. 9% in the room today, you're not having them. You're not going to steal their future, their hope, their relationship with God. You're not. You're not having my family. You're not having this nation. The enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And sometimes God's people have to stand up and just say no. And the way we say no is we prophesy to the bones. We believe. We take an even though I will posture. We say, I'm going to pray. I'm going to be courageous and ask for help if I need it. That's how I say no. I'm going to get educated. I'm going to get informed. I'm not going to put my head in the sand and hope it all goes away. I'm going to understand it. Love the fact that this church is going to do a PG workshop for parents in a couple of weeks' time, because that's how we prophesy. That's how we say no. And when we do, I believe there is hope. There is life, life to the full that Jesus wants to give. And so I'm going to land there. And I know that Ralph might come and lead us in a bit of response. But I'd love you to think about what does it look like. And so the final thing I'm going to just put up for you to scan for one last time, because this is a real practical thing. This is an app that we have for churches. And in this app are links to the support and help, but also links to training, how to understand this issue better, and also how you can pray about this issue better as well. We're doing a 24/7 prayer week in a few weeks' time. Love you just to sign up for a slot, and we'll send you some details, and you can start praying about this. This is how we say no. This is how we prophesy. So that is part of your response. That's spiritual response too, right? Sometimes our spiritual response is we stand up and we do this. Sometimes we do this with our phone and scan something, and we actually go away and we learn and we educate ourselves and we take action. And so that's your response too, but I'm going to hand over to see where he wants to take it.
Thanks so much, Ian. Can we give Ian a round of applause? Yeah, we've not got loads of time. Groups are finishing soon, but yeah, like Ian said, there's a few kind of things practically off the back of this morning. So we're going to be running a PG workshop. I think we've earmarked April, Wednesday in April, but we'll let you know as soon as we've got that nailed when that's going to happen. And just really want to encourage you to check out the Naked Truth stuff. But I think the thing that really strikes me is just it's the process. It's that actually the kind of one of the amazing things that we have in this room and beyond this room is a group of people that are committed to one another for the long term, to be with one another, to be friends, to cheer each other on. So whether it's with all the stuff we've been thinking about this morning or anything, just want to encourage you to lean into community. So whether that's with your small group, whether that's with trusted friends, other people that you're connected with, like actually, God wants freedom for us. He wants abundant life for us in every single area. And actually, we get to be part of that with one another, that we get to cheer one another on, stand with one another, pray with one another. And so I really just want to encourage you to be like, even though stuff is tricky, I will lean in. I will lean into community. And if you need help with that, come chat to myself, Joe, Neil, Effie, any one of us. We'd love to help you get connected. But just let's do stuff together, and let's have real conversations with each other that spur one another on, because there's real joy, there's real freedom, there's real life in the midst of that.